Thank you. It's so lucky to be back in person. So sick and tired of sitting behind screens watching this conference, right? A massive shout out to my old colleague in selling chewing gum, Doug Place, who set me up wonderfully by landing the notion of chaos. Even if it was just ever so briefly, it was one of his key points, and perhaps a couple of years working together selling Stimorol and Chlorets and Dentine did that to us. So I'm going to make a little bit of a case for why chaos in our worlds is welcome and necessary, and we should be doing pretty much everything we can to fight against engineering too much of the madness and the chaos out of our systems, because I believe fundamentally that the magic that we are responsible for producing sits at the very heart of environments that welcome in a fair amount of chaos. Now, at Design in Durban, in I think it was 2014 or 2015, I was massively inspired by Dan Widen's talk. I still think about it to this day. I think about it pretty much every single day when it comes down to sort of embracing the complexity and challenges and difficulty of chaos. And I walked away from that talk with this quote sort of in my head, and I've been quoting it ever since. And you can imagine my surprise when doing a little bit of research for this talk when I realized he never actually uttered these words at all. The words were, "Our agency is at its best when it operates on the edge of chaos." In fact, what he said, though, was far more colorful. What he said was, "I love this agency the most when it's off balance, when it's like we're in the car moving 7,000 miles an hour, trying to make a sharp left turn, and everyone is holding their breath, and some of them are puking, and everyone's leaning to one side to keep the damn thing from rolling over." Now, I love that. Firstly, I love that I can claim the first quote as my own now. But I love the notion of Dan Widen, an agency founder and a leader at the time of an agency that I admired so greatly, speaking so passionately about why chaos in his environment is so unbelievably important for who they are as an agency. And it helped me reflect on many of the great agency founders that I've worked with, whether it be Bob Rightford, Kev Aspos, Ross Charles, and Joanne Thomas at the Jupiter Drawing Room, or most latterly, Reg Lascaris and John Hunt. And I think that if they were to be reading this quote, they'd probably be nodding their heads in agreement, talking about that's precisely the kind of agency environment they wanted to create. And it had me wonder, why, as succeeding generations that follow them, do we work so hard to engineer this kind of chaos and energy out of our systems? So let's just talk about creativity for a little bit. I always find it so super useful to look in strange places for different definitions of creativity, right? Growing up, I was a massive fan of skateboarding. My son is 9 years old, and he drags me out into the sidewalk every now and then. It's very hard when you're 45 years old. You spend your time worrying about breaking a leg or actually physically dying. But it's amazing to watch them express their creativity on a skateboard. Rodney Mullen was probably the most important skateboarders that ever lived, credited with inventing 600 tricks, which is essentially the bedrock and foundation of skateboarding as it is today. His definition of creativity was to connect disparate information and bring them together in a way that creates something new. Now, I found that unbelievably powerful, because in the invention of new ideas and the creation of new things, by pulling in together various data points, various stimulus from multiple data points, we have the opportunity to create something new, to invent, to create. What he also said, which I think was pretty profound, was that the biggest obstacle to creativity is breaking through the barrier of disbelief. Before it is done, nobody believes it can be done. Yet until it is done, when everybody knows that it can be done, how many follow in quick succession and achieve the same thing? We see that all the time. It happens. The 4-minute mile is a fantastic example. Roger Bannister did it. Nobody believed it would be possible. And following that, there was a very quick succession of individuals that broke the 4-minute mile. And that happens with ideas too. So break through the barrier of disbelief. Secondly, to create the appropriate environment for doing that. Ensuring that the environment is surrounded by people who have a commonly held goal that pretty much the impossible can be done. The impossible can be achieved constantly. Interestingly, what he also said was that that averagely talented individuals in high-performing environments raise their standard, right? So it's incumbent on us to ensure that we constantly set a context within our environments, whether we're running one company, 10 companies, 20 companies, a one-man band, that we're constantly feeding that organization or that group of people with the right kind of stimulus in which to innovate. So with that said, it's kind of my sort of fundamental belief that innovation and integration are completely indivisible. If we talk about integration as the coming together of various disparate disciplines, skills, individuals from diverse backgrounds, and we're creating something new out of that, how is one to create if they're living in an entirely homogeneous environment? So just a quick look practically at what that means for us at TBWA, right? I like to think, it's kind of my job to think this, that we have a group of companies that cover the full advertising and marketing value chain, right? From where a former colleague of mine, Rob Hill at Ogilvy, used to call a strategy with a big S at Yellowwood, through to brand design, brand experiences in Grid, integrated advertising communications at Huntler Scaris, performance and precision marketing at OPMG together with our partners at OMD and PhD, Magna Carta, corporate reputation management company, and Sting. So we've chosen to organize ourselves in specialist companies where the very best specialists feel like they have a home, feel like they can contribute meaningfully, feel like they are surrounded by those that will push them in their discipline. Not that they feel like they are but an individual in a massive organization in which their discipline is simply one of many. Now, the challenge with that is, how do you pull that all together? And the truth is that A, it's very difficult, and B, it's not down to any hard measures. It's down to a whole series of soft skills. It's about a spirit of collaboration. Wanting to collaborate when it is the harder thing to do is a choice. It's not something you can force somebody to do. So as an organization, and there's some folks that have either been in a pitch with me, this comes directly out of a pitch deck, or have formerly worked with me, this will be very, very familiar. So if that's how we kind of choose to structure ourselves, this is how we choose to organize ourselves. If you were to lift the lid on TBWA and you said, we're just a collection of talent, we're just a collection of individuals who bring all of their skills to work to contribute so meaningfully to solving complex business problems, A, for the client and B, for ourselves too, this is kind of what it would look like if you put all of those people together. So we've worked unbelievably hard to create a culture of collaboration within the organization where absolutely everybody understands and believes that their individual success is inextricably linked to the group's success, and that my contribution to the whole is far greater than my contribution just to myself. So this is kind of how we choose to look at it. We talk a lot about open source, about being open source, and this is a very, very important word, and this is a definition that I stumbled upon, which I really loved. To take what other people do, to make it better, and to give it back so we all rise further. Now, if you understand what I said just now about collaboration being a choice, the notion of open source speaks directly to that. Now, what does open source mean? Practically, it means my idea is our idea. It means how I define myself is my contribution to somebody else's idea. And that doesn't only live parochially within the world of TBWA. We've had a shift into a world where when we talk about open source, we don't just talk about our operating companies or the skills or disciplines that are resident within our company. We're not arrogant enough to believe that we know it all. I mean, that would be the most fatal flaw. We have to take other agency partners, whether they exist within our clients' ecosystems, whether they exist in our broader ecosystems, whether they are just an individual that we believe can contribute meaningfully to helping us solve that problem, and bring them in. And bring them in a way that is meaningful to both them and to us and non-threatening. Again, culture is absolutely everything. If I were to take a step back, and this was kind of, to be honest, I wish some of my very old colleagues were here. Some of my colleagues from Ogilvy may even remember this. This was my ambition when I was at Ogilvy too. And I think that's okay, right? It's okay that we have a personal ambition that we carry through various roles within our careers. But at a fundamental level, it was about being for TBWA, I hope TBWA, the best place for the best people to do their best work. So work very, very hard to ensure that we're creating the right kind of environment for the most talented people to produce their best work. And that's important to me. The world is one where people will be with you for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And that's okay. We don't have to hold on to our best people for their entire careers. I don't actually care that they do the most work with us from their careers. What I care about most is that they do their best work when they're with us. Now, what does that mean? What that means is it is incumbent on me to ensure that I create the environment to allow them to access the fullest breadth of their talents. Because that is something that has to be given willingly within a creative environment. You can't sit over a shoulder and demand somebody give their best. It has to be given willingly. I love this. Now, most will know that we talk about ourselves as the pirates, and sometimes we behave like real pirates, sometimes we behave like pirates with a small p, but we try and behave like pirates most of the time. Misfits aren't misfits amongst other misfits. Now, I love this, right? Our industry, agencies, and I'm going to exaggerate a little bit for effect to land the point, right? Used to be a home for people who could not find homes elsewhere. Used to be homes for people who had prodigious talents who just could not fit in elsewhere. And very often, they couldn't even fit into the agency that they were contributing so meaningfully towards. However, they were the people that made the biggest difference and will continue to make the biggest difference. Now, it's our responsibility to make sure that we have, call it a coalition of the misfit willing, right? Where all of the misfits within our world find a home, and that we're looking to bring more interesting people into our environments to create a level of discomfort that shakes us loose of any conformity that may be setting in. Conformity will be pretty much the death knell of any creative environment. Now, I'm a huge sports fan. Rugby World Cup's going on. I can't not have a sports story in here, right? This is a guy by the name of Jean-Pierre Rive. Today, he's a prodigious talent. Back then, in the late 70s, early 80s, he was the captain of the French rugby team. Jean-Pierre Rive played with all of the hallmarks of the great French players. Massive heart, immense creativity, put it all on the line, smoked a cigarette at halftime, all of that kind of stuff. You can imagine it. When asked how he took to the field, the spirit in which he took to the field, he said, "I take to the field with a clown in the head and a love in the heart." And I thought that was such a wonderful metaphor for how we should be approaching our day jobs. For me, it spoke about joy. It spoke about freedom. It spoke about passion. It spoke about love, and it spoke about heart. Now, we need to be working unbelievably hard to ensure that we're creating an environment where everybody can bring themselves to work with a clown in their head and a love in the heart. So chaos, I'm going to come back to this just very, very briefly. There's such a thing as the chaos theory, right? And a lot of people think chaos is complete disorganization, mayhem. Like they think about, the joke, Heath Ledger, the Joker, causing absolute fucking chaos wherever he goes. But the truth is that chaos is implicit in nature itself. The chaos theory, some of you will know it as the butterfly effect, suggests that even the smallest changes in nature can have a profound effect. So chaos and this idea of tension sits at the very heart of nature itself. It is not random. It is not the absence of discipline. It's not inefficient. It is designed by nature. So tension is something that we should be embracing every single day. We shouldn't run away from tension. We shouldn't be working to engineer tension out of our environments. What we should be doing is working hard to engineer toxic tensions that can also be the betrayal of true creativity. But we need to understand that tension is good. Why do we engineer tension out of our environments? Well, the truth is that managers do it because managing tension and chaos is hard. It's hard. It's uncontrollable. It feels unmanageable. And where we're busy and where there's a lot of things going on, we want variables to be locked down. What I'm promoting is that we embrace the variables that set the conditions for creativity. Colleen de Courcy was the Chief Creative Officer at Wieden & Kennedy, Worldwide Chief Creative Officer at Wieden & Kennedy, probably the creative leader I look up to the most in the world. And she said, a creative organization is violent and messy and aggressive and must, more than anything, want to make things. And in the making of things, all of the challenges of getting there go away. This is the nature of creative organizations. The sooner we stop fighting it and just get on with it, the better. Little anecdote. I mentioned I worked with Kevin Aspos, Joanne Thomas, and Ross Charles at the Jupiter Drawing Room. When I joined that agency in 2004 now, 77 was their number. They said, we will never grow beyond 77 people. Never, ever will we grow beyond 77, because that, for them, random number is what we believe to be the optimal number for creating the appropriate environment for producing the kind of culture and the kind of work we want to produce. And they stuck to that for a very, very long time. And unlike the Dan Wyden quote, I did actually phone Kev and say to him, Kev, did I imagine this, or is this true? And he said to me, no, it is absolutely true. He said that how things evolved, though, was that when they were bought, they needed to scale because they were in an earnout, their priorities changed, they grew unbelievably effectively to 190 people, and they turned around, they realized their agency wasn't their agency anymore. Process, structure, new management came into their environment, and things had changed on such a fundamental level. Some of my best years of my advertising career were spent in Jupiter Drawing Room for those 2.5, 3 years. Massive respect for Kev, Joe, and Ross. So nothing is by accident. The kinds of environments that we set up to promote creativity, to promote innovation, to welcome chaos, to embrace tension, and to ensure that everybody is pushing and pulling, for the most part, in the right direction. It'll never be perfect. It's understanding that it's in these collisions and in these fissions that magic happens. Now, that new stuff emerges and well-held conventions are broken. So with that said, please, if you were to take one thing away from this, don't run away from chaos. Don't run away from tension. Run towards them. Embrace them. They are the heartland of creativity. They are the heartland of innovation. And please, in all that you do, continue to play with a clown in the head and a love in the heart. Thank you very much.